Welcome to the Idea Climbing Podcast. The epitome of leadership is the ability to share your leadership story and leave a legacy. I discuss how to do that with my guest, Shelley Goldstein. Shelley equips visionary leaders with the tools to communicate boldly, lead decisively, and influence with gravitas, especially under pressure, having coached over 1,000 executives and entrepreneurs across 5 continents. Her competitive advantage is speed and effectiveness, delivering a time-saving framework for action-driven leaders who can't afford to lose opportunities in high-stakes situations. As the architect of the remarkable framework and #1 international best-selling author, Shelley transforms how leaders communicate at the neurological level, helping them secure deals, command boardrooms, and build lasting legacies through authentic executive presence. We dive into topics such as why it's important to create and share your genesis or origin story with the world, the importance of creating and following a vision for your business and how to do it, the one thing above all else you need to do to share your leadership story and leave a legacy, and other golden nuggets of advice. You're going to love this show. Shelley, thank you for making the time to be on the Idea Climbing Podcast. I appreciate you.
Oh, I appreciate you. Great to be here today, Mark.
And I got to read this. I got to get this right. We're going to be talking about how to share your leadership story and leave a legacy. But before we get into, the tips, the tricks, the strategies, everything like that, when it comes to creating your leadership story, we'll look at legacy in a minute, but creating your leadership story, why is that important? I mean, where did your leadership story begin? What's your story with that?
The leadership story begins with all of our origins of how we do things. And it can go back to our youth when we're joining maybe an orchestra or we're involved in sports. It's those behavioral studies, it's those stories that lead and build one on top of the other that become your legacy, who you are today, and why you lead the way you do.
So where did you get started? What do you consider to be your earliest leadership experiences?
Oh, wow. I would have to say, when I'm not kidding, it goes back to probably when I was 8 or 9 years old, and a group of us we put together a neighborhood newspaper. Three of us did, three little friends about the same age. And we hosted a beauty pageant, and we had articles and recipes that we got from the different neighbors. And being able to organize that at such a young age and actually publish it month after month, looking back, I learned a lot about leadership skills and taking the initiative. Some of the things I carry forward with me to today is the idea of sharing that responsibility and delegating with other people, whether I was aware of it or not, or it just naturally happened. I think that's what made the whole thing work then. And I think that's what makes or helps me be a better leader today, is that sharing of ideas and giving people autonomy to create some of the most innovative, creative ideas.
As an adult, let's say maybe college or later, what are your first memories of leadership where you were consciously aware of, okay, I have a responsibility as a leader? What did that look like for you? When did you discover being consciously aware that, okay, I am a leader now? What did that look like?
Probably in my earlier career as a costume designer, the responsibility of creating a look, making sure the costumes, if you will, were at a place where they could be perceived from the audience, meaning when that curtain goes up, and this was a very important lesson I learned early on, when that curtain goes up, I can't be up there and the assistants can't be up there hemming and sewing. It's showtime. And I think that whole idea of it's showtime was an early leadership development, probably turning point for me to realize I can't do everything. I have to prioritize, can't sweat the small stuff, and lead through that and make sure the team understands that the work that they're doing contributes to that success, to that vision of what things need to be, and that they're not necessarily failing because they don't get everything done, checked off on the task list.
So as far as, let's say, newer entrepreneurs, as far as I'll say stepping into a leadership role, where does leadership begin in the business world, especially entrepreneurship?
It's so hard to say where it actually begins. If you have an idea, let's start with the incubating. You have a great idea. How you strategize that, how you move forward with that, that's an innate leadership skill. I'm going to have a marketing strategy. I'm going to have a sales strategy. I'm going to develop my brand this way. Those are all leadership skills because you're making really important decisions. And those stories of how you do that, that becomes the legacy. That becomes your competitive advantage and unique story to only you. And the stories are so important because that's where the money flows. And I'm taking that from Don Valentine, who of Sequoia Ventures. Money is how responds to the stories. That's what people buy into. That's the journey.
I'd love you to dive a little bit deeper. What are some components or a structure? What makes a great leadership story? What should people be sharing with the world?
The journey, the mistakes, those decisions you made. You know what? I'm going to go with my marketing strategy and hire this team and go forward with them. And let's say it's a bomb. Nothing happens. 6 months, you spend thousands of dollars. That's a learning moment. So what did you do to compensate for that, to switch gears and become the success you are today? So it's the little things that sometimes we think are so unimportant. For example, I coached a young guy who was a very, very successful entrepreneur. I mean, he made it to like well over 100 million in his 20s. He was a college dropout and he created a watch company. And through social media, which he knew really, really well, he built this whole company and sold the organization for millions and millions of dollars. After the sale of that company, he came to me and he said, I have nothing to talk about. The company sold. That was my identity. I don't know what to talk about and show up now. Who am I? I'm nothing without that organization. So what we unpacked together was the fact that that journey, whether it's in the past or it's current, is part of that story, is part of that legacy. And identifying with that as an entrepreneur and focusing in on the little moments, the pivotal moments, the early days where you had no followers, let's say, to the time where you had millions of followers, to the time where you couldn't fulfill your first order for your product, to the time where you sold hundreds of millions of units. All those details are every bit of who you are today and where you're going tomorrow. And changing that story, be able to express that story, changed everything for this young entrepreneur. He's now running a lot of other businesses based on that experience because that's what people want to know.
Tell me more about that. When you say based on that experience, he was sharing the stories of his trials and tribulations, then he attracted other business owners. How did he end up running, not necessarily running the entire company, of course, I'm assuming it would be a founder, but how did he get into that role of doing work with other companies? Was it because of his story, or did he start from scratch and start writing a new story with new companies?
It's the story. How did you do it? How did Apple happen? We all want to know the genesis of Steve Jobs. We all want to know how Nike came to be, how Starbucks, some of the biggest brands in the world. How did Oprah get to be Oprah? Not that you're a success today. So it was the same for this young entrepreneur. They wanted to know those stories, the failures, the successes, the nuanced moments where you thought it was over. And that's what inspires people to go forward and say, okay, well, can we try this here? Or how would we approach this scenario using some of those ideas and examples? What would you do right? What would you avoid? What would you continue to experiment with, right? If we all had a crystal ball, hey, it would be a hell of a lot easier. But that journey is what fascinates people. I mean, think of a superhero. Think of any superhero in the Marvel comics. It's their weaknesses, it's their vulnerabilities, it's their origin story of how they got to where they are is what fascinates us and why every single movie includes that. in the fact that this person can save lives and fly with a cape. It comes from deep, deep within. That is how you embody your voice and your vision to create that legacy.
That is awesome. And you mentioned trials and tribulations, whether it's yourself, people you know, clients. What advice do you have when people that are in that growth mode? For lack of a better term, I'll say, how do you mentally keep on keeping on during the dark times? Because it's one thing to look back and say, wow, I had these rough times, but I sold my company for 10 million. It's a different level. When you're in the trenches, what advice do you have to keep on keeping on to be a good leader?
I'm going to be honest with you, and I face this myself. It's hard to keep the pom poms up every day, all day, and I don't think that's realistic. I think we need to acknowledge some of those difficult challenges, but as a visionary, keep your eye on that ball. Recognize, okay, this isn't working out 100%. It doesn't feel good.
Mhm.
Accept that, sit in that, and honestly, the vision is what's going to take me there. That's not going to hold me back. So I've acknowledged it. I'm now trudging forward and keeping my eye on that goal, that idea of what it's going to be, because the bigger vision is how you're going to help people, not sitting in that sullen moment where you've messed up. The idea is to accept it, make it part of your story. They say go out and walk in nature. I do that a lot. Just to clear the air, move forward, and get back on that road to that vision.
How do you know when you're on that road and things get tough and maybe a couple failures happen, not failures, but I'll say lessons happen. How do you know when to keep going down the road and when to shift gears and say, I don't want to say giving up, I'll say shift gears to another project or something different. How do you determine, I got to just keep on and I'll get to that vision as opposed to, okay, this is not working. I need a new vision. How do you tell the difference between those two?
I don't know that there's a magic wand for that, but something I work with my clients that when they're using the framework that I work with them on being able to communicate that story, being able to step into their power and lead with gravitas and assuredness, they'll say, this feels weird. This is something strange. And I'll say, yes, exactly. Because if you keep doing the same thing you're doing over and over again and the results are the same, well, we all know that famous quote is the definition of insanity. You can't change. So you've got nothing to lose because you already know what the end result is, just staying in that path. And when that repetition and the movement stays flat, that's when you say, I got to do something. That's what I say. Try something new. I got nothing to lose. Worst case scenario, it stays right where it is. But you can try something new to propel yourself forward. And that is usually where the growth and change happens. And it's recognizing that, giving it 1, 2, 3 shots. After that, if you're stagnant, that's a sign to do something different.
Well, once you get through the switching gears or staying the course, you're very close to or realizing your vision. Is legacy something that you look back on and say, "Wow, this is is it retrospective where you're looking, oh, I was here, I did this," or is a legacy something you're actively building while you're building the legacy, or like I said, is it something that you look back on and create a story in hindsight, or a little bit of both?
It's not creating a story, it's just retelling something you've experienced. It's there. Life is a story. Every day you do something is a new idea, a new story, a new experience, a new case study, a new data point, a new white paper. Those are the ideas that it's important to, yes, reflect on them and bring them back into the life going forward. But it's not a manufactured thing. It's a truth. It's a truth that you're happy to share to move people forward.
Oh, I like that. Okay, truth that you're happy to share, and then to move people forward. Is it inspiring people, or what? When you say people, what people are you referring to? Is it their employees, their network at large? Again, a little bit of both. What people are you moving
Yeah.
forward as a leader with your legacy?
Yeah. It's your audience. It could be your client base. It could be your board of directors. It could be your employees. It could be your constituents. I mean, again, I'm going to go back to some of the greats like Steve Jobs. We're motivated by that vision. Many of us went out and bought Apple products. It was more expensive than the PC at the time, but we went out because we wanted that vision. We wanted to be part of that journey, that bigger idea. It wasn't a dollar exchange so much. And that's absolutely it. By sharing your legacy, people are motivated by how you overcame your obstacles, how you managed things, what different things you did that changed the world for you. And it's absolutely motivating and encouraging people. These stories, I mentioned Don Valentine. You want people to invest in you? You want people to put their money and time into your idea and vision? Stories are what's going to make that happen, that legacy, how you did it, not necessarily a bland fact sheet or a feature and benefit. You can read that on the box top. Anybody could own that. But again, as Don Valentine says, and I think it's so brilliant, that's how the money works. The money flows as a function of the story.
And you mentioned motivating people, and Steve Jobs, obviously a phenomenal on every level that I understand, at least through interviews, a great motivator.
Yeah.
In order to motivate people, I'd imagine, and tell me if I'm on point, first you have to get them, I'll say bought in, or you have to get them to want to be involved with your legacy. And once they're involved, then you motivate them. What do you do to get people involved? Maybe in the early days, because then you can motivate them once the herd is there. But how do you build the herd? How do you get people to buy into your legacy and your vision in the first place?
To buy in is sharing those moments of success, of failure, of trial and error. It's honest, it's truth. I mentioned that earlier. And that's what people buy into, that honesty and truth. Nothing else. Absolutely. It's because you build business on trust. I trust you because you're honest and you're truthful. And if you think of every successful brand, including individuals, I mean, Martha Stewart, there's a great documentary out about her journey and her story. It's incredible how she went up and down. The woman went to prison and came out another success story because of her honesty and truth. And that's why people ramped up and followed her again. We love that journey. And that's really important to continually remind yourself as well as others, why am I doing this? I believe it keeps us humble.
I could be reading into this, but I got to bring it up. It sounds like you're saying vulnerability is part of leadership, and so many people think a leader has to be, the big statue in the town square, and they're amazing, and oh my God, if I can just get employed by him or her, it's great. Are you saying that leaders need to be vulnerable to be effective?
That ugly word vulnerability that scares people, I'm rephrasing it as truth and honest and being humble. So maybe that's a little less intimidating. But even at the end of Martha Stewart's documentary, she says she can't be perfect. And her whole vision, her whole mission in the businesses that got her to Walmart as $1 billion industry was perfection. And she came all this way to realize it isn't that. You can't always be perfect. I mean, that's quite a statement for somebody who built a brand on perfection. So absolutely, it is those vulnerable moments, those honest, truthful moments.
And when and how often should you share your legacy? Again, and is it sharing it all along the entire journey? Here's where I've been, being honest and truthful. Is it once you hit a certain level of success and you use it to motivate people? When do you start, or how often are you sharing your legacy itself? Is it once I've made it big and I sold my company for 10 million, now I have a story to tell? Or are you sharing a story as the story is actually building itself?
I think as you're building a business, I mean, I have teams that I work with. I'm sure you do too, outsourced teams, people that are on salary. And I share the learning curve with them in small doses. And I think we have to be, discretionary about what we share and to what capacity. But if you know your audience and you know they're ready to hear it, and you're onboarding people, you're trying to persuade them with a new idea, bringing those moments in throughout that journey is going to help bring them on. And it also, you're opening the door to conversation. You're letting your people, your audience, your board of directors, whoever you're dealing with, know that this is an open door. We can have a conversation. And I want to hear what you have to say as much as here's what I want to share with you. That is really important because at the end of the day, all of us just want to be heard.
Oh, that is awesome. It's people in leadership roles, especially once there's a certain level of I'll say, like a number of people on the team. It's not just like you and a virtual assistant or something like that. To encourage, I'll say create. How do you create open conversations with people who could be like, I can't, I'll use the V word, vulnerable. I'm not sure what I'm doing. I don't know if I'm going to hit my goal, whatever it might be. How do you create an environment is the word I was looking for. How do you create an environment for open and honest conversations when people could just as easily be fearful of, I don't want to look bad?
One thing I tell my clients to do, start a meeting with your story. Start a meeting with a moment in your life that changed everything, for better or worse. A personal, private moment about your business as it relates to the business. I could talk about some of my early days of coaching, how I wasn't sure that the client was getting what I was delivering. I was probably more nervous than that client was, coming there to learn confidence and how to speak up. And I was shaking and I was shaking. And I really tried to focus on the client, but I spent more time worrying about my own fears. And I failed that client. I did not give them the very best. I did not serve them in the way I could. And by sharing that moment with you, perhaps you're saying, oh yeah, I've had something like that. And here's how I've overcome it. I'm sharing a special time that was a learning moment that brings you to say, Shelley's not perfect. I connect with that. She's creating a safe space for me to share as well. That's how you do it.
That is awesome. And I know I'm not going to think of the exact phrase, but when you become a leader, a lot of people say, I believe in it too. Great leaders develop other great leaders. When it comes to being a leader and helping others, how do you get other people below you or tangential to you in your network as an inspiration? How can you get them to embrace their legacy and start sharing their legacy? What does that look like?
Well, it's really important to, again, start those conversations to let people it's okay. And actually ask them, how do you feel about this? What's your defining moment? And let people know in those meetings, especially when you're getting status reports and updates about where things are, for better or worse, and let the team know, listen, let's figure out where the holes were. I know you're doing a great job, Mark. You've been holding the fort, but we had a little downfall over here. We had a setback. We lost client A, B, C, and D because the shipment got tangled up. Let's review that and see how I can help you and how others, what do you need to make this a success? So when you invite those types of conversations, it's not like you're wrong, you're out of here and you're fired. It's, we had a setback. How do we overcome it? And starting it that way, building those opportunities, especially in one-on-ones and especially in group meetings, acknowledging the better of the person. The team did great, but here's what the challenge is. How can we overcome this together? You're building a team. You're building a group that everybody's trying to rally on and reach the end goal.
This has been awesome. And if people are watching or listening, there's a lot of nuggets in there as far as advice. When it comes to sharing your leadership story and leaving a legacy, whether it's reinforcing something you already said or maybe something you haven't touched on yet, for viewers, listeners, if you were to say, look, when it comes to sharing your leadership story, like I said, leaving your legacy, if you're going to do at least one thing, if you want to do it right, at least do this one thing, what would you tell people that one thing would be?
Open your meetings, start your conversations with a moment in your journey.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much. And if people want to find you online, where's the best place or places to go?
Oh, you can find Coach Shelley at Remarkable Speaking on YouTube. I'm also on LinkedIn and, of course, Remarkable Speaking website.
This has been excellent. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Mark. This has been really a good conversation.
And scene. Wow.